This is the SHV650 Servo that I have installed into my son's TRX-4 Sport, which is probably a terrible idea. Way too much power for a kid. You can pinch your finger off with this thing. And just checking the speed here, it's pretty dang fast, and I'm actually having troubles turning my fingers any faster. This is only on 3-cell. On 4-cell, it gets really rowdy, but yeah, it jiggles. It'll jiggle. So we're just gonna out here, you know, gonna test it. We're gonna put it on the rocks. We've got a Crawlmaster motor, 10-pole sensorless end runner, and it is combined with a Mamba Micro X. The motor is 1800 kV. We're gonna see if the stock bumper will let me clear some of this stuff. And just see if we can heat the servo up or possibly break the steering on this TRX-4, because it does have plastic still. And this servo will, let's see, on 3-cell, I don't remember what it peaks. That's from my website to remember. Enough. That's all I care about, is enough. Oh, go ahead and get hung up on that belly. Belly. Just need to get past the one point. Hook that left tire. There it is. Ooh, a little slippery today. This beautiful day out here. Very nice. Man, these stock TRX-4 tires, oh, I wouldn't say they have a bad rep, but for stock tires, they do so well. They perform a little different than the ones on the Element, but for ready-to-run tires, both the Element and the TRX-4 just really come with great tires. And I'm talking about this from old school perspective of what we used to have to deal with, but even modern kits, modern ready-to-runs, these tires hook so well, especially after they've been broken in. And this rig has gotten lots of wheeling time. Lots and lots of wheeling time. You know, speaking of old school, back in the day with servos, when we used to have the arms race of power, mostly between like Hi-Tech and Futaba, the way that we got more torque and more speed was essentially they had to make hotter and hotter motors and use better and better MOSFETs. And they just had to pull more amps. They essentially had the goal of pulling as many amps as possible. But what this created is a servo that, let's say in an airplane with all this torque, would totally work, or any other, you know, steering situation. But you put it into a crawler to where you have the situation right now where I would be binding with an old servo. With this guy, it just steers right through. But in situations where you would bind up the servo, well, even with the stock TRX-4 servo, you saw me sit in one spot on one of the videos. Oh, my fantastic wiring job is falling to pieces. You saw me burn up a servo because I was just sitting and talking in the video. And the reason for that is lack of amp limiting. The old school servos, they had no amp limiting. That's fairly new. It's in the market, relatively at least. I'd say maybe 5 years, last 5 years, 6 years or so, amp limiting became more common. Snappy. But back in the day, you would get into a situation, let's say like this, to where it's forcing my wheels to turn off of center. Now, this servo, what is flexing and what is not. So the servo is definitely moving. Oh boy, that knuckle that's closest to you is turning into a wet noodle. All right, so the point that I was trying to make before I got distracted by the plastic flexing is back in the day, you get into a situation like this where it couldn't return to center fully. Well, the servo is, and it would overheat and just die. So I'm gonna push it into this and we're just gonna feel, you know, is it overheating? It is dead cold. It is absolutely dead cold. The motor in this servo is absolutely humongous. But back in the day, you sit there for like 15 seconds and the motor would just keep trying and keep trying and keep trying. And as the motor got hotter, resistive losses depend on the temperature, but it's also the square of the amp draw. And so as your temperature is rising, assuming that it keeps pulling the same amount of amperage, which it really wouldn't, amperage would be going down as it overheats, just as any real servo test will show you. They would just go into a thermal runaway situation to where they would continue trying and trying, and as it warmed up, the driver may have actually even been pushing it harder because it was responding less and less. You know, it would get weaker and weaker, and so the difference between the servo horn position or the servo output position and where it was told to be gets larger and larger, and the larger that discrepancy is on a servo feedback loop, essentially the harder you drive the servo to get back to the position that you're trying to push it into. So these days we have amp limiting. Not only does that prevent a servo from overheating if it is implemented properly, but it will also give it a stall point. If you can make it to the stall point, then the servo just essentially stops responding, and the servo driver will not ask more from the motor. It will just say, okay, our error is going to increase now because we are at a hard limit. You know, we're at amp limit. So, you know, deal with it, motor. You have less to work with, or as the resistance goes up, the amps might even go down a little bit, depending on how it is. If you know, back in the day, the reason why the servos would stall themselves out and smoke is that they would just pull as many amps as the motor would pull. So the question is, you know, on a short circuit, if the servo driver is saying, okay, we're at max now, how many amps is that going to pull? Well, these days, that's not how it operates, in that our motor, let's say on this one, our motor will pull 20 amps. If we allowed it to pull 20 amps, this motor would pull 20 amps on 4-cell, and it would produce an obscene amount of torque. Yeah, we're talking, yeah, depending on how fast we get out of the linear region, closer to 1,800 ounce inches. But you know what that would create? If you've heard me rant about motors, that would create heat, because amps create torque, torque creates heat. And if we drove this servo at essentially twice the amperage, amperage is the square, or I'm sorry, heat is the square of the amperage. So if we push twice the amperage through this, we'd be getting 4 times the heat. And that is an incredible increase to heating. And that is an incredible need for heat shedding as well. 4 times the heat. You know, you think of a 25 watt light bulb versus a 100 watt light bulb, how much more heat that 100 watt is going to make if they're the same size bulb. That would be the same as if we overdrove the servo. But this modern age, we have amp limiting. We have, well, amp limiting. And so when the servo overheats, while we would have more resistive losses at the same amp draw, it will plateau. When it gets so warm, they actually won't draw as many amps, and it'll start to go down. The way that the drivers are these days, it's kind of like a smart driver, to where it has amp limiting, but it also has hard set limits on PWM. So it doesn't matter how far out of spec our servo is from where it's supposed to be, they just simply won't pull harder. It's a very good safety mechanism, really good fail-safe. You know, I don't know if I can make this with this rig, but there was one rig that actually would climb this. Oh, I got it hooked. I got it hooked. Oh, first time on camera. Oh, come on, baby. You can do it. I need to, oh no, no, it was so close. Oh, I can't recover this. I shall not financially recover from this. Oh, it was hooked. That is half the battle at least, is just getting that hook. These damn bumpers and sliders. No, all right. I'll try that again. You gotta barely miss the front tire on the wall, just enough to get it around and get it to hook into that little crease. You can kind of see the sun coming through that crease that I'm creeping towards. And we get hooked into that crease. Oh, I did it the one time. It is, there it is, there it is. Now, if I can keep my rear, there we go. Oh, come on, come on. Ah. Yeah, I don't think this rig is quite high enough performance to make that climb. That is an incredible climb. Now we're just, oh. I don't think this is gonna work out so well. Come on, snappy servo, get me out of this. I don't think it will, but I got nothing. All right, so what was I ranting about servos again? Something back in my day, uphill both ways. I had to crawl in the snow because my servos would burn up if I didn't. I had to use duster to cool my servos off in between runs, just so I'd have that competitive edge. I used to have to bake blueberry pies with boysenberries. It was rough times in the past. All right. Well, unfortunately, for me at least, I have things that I need to do besides just crawling all day. So I guess we're gonna have to call it here after maybe this next rock. Just one more rock. Yeah, back in the day when 333 ounce-inches peak was considered the holy grail of rock crawling servos. These days the stock ones basically come with that. Anything that's like 25 kilogram. Of course, even back in the day that wasn't real, so we were probably only getting about 250. These days more and more companies are going to a real torque. Something that's not just load cell slamming, pow! You get all the momentum from your gears, and you know, if it's a fast servo, you can really fool a load sensor into thinking that a whole lot of torque was applied. And it was, because you know there's momentum in those gears going, but if you edge it up there, then you get a more real world torque sensation, real world torque test if you don't load cell slam. And it's kind of a split still, but more and more manufacturers are going to a not, you know, they don't give a run up essentially. You do want to trigger your servo fast, because the slower you do, just the more time you have building up heat while you're increasing, so it won't quite make the same peaks if you go too slow. Yeah, well, I think I put that servo through enough hardness. Let's see, there we go. Get it, just wedge it into a crack here. Let's see, where's the best wedge? Oh yeah, right there. Get in that crack and break something. This is a fun test that I shouldn't have so much fun with. There's a little bit of heat. There's a few degrees over ambient. Just a just a little. Just get in that crack. Yeah, we've come so far with servos. It's pretty cool to see, and just just because I've been crawling for so long now, since I guess 2002, that I've gotten to see not only the creation of the industry somewhere around 2007, 2008, when we got our first available rock crawler, but the adaptation of some products like servos because of the crawler market. Before the crawler market, there wasn't the amp limiting, and I don't think it ever would have been put into servos unless the rock crawler market burned up so many servos, that when the ground market became essentially crawlers, is what, 4 years ago at this point, 5 years ago, to where the majority of sales, more than half of all ground market sales of vehicles and electronics were for crawlers. At that point, the servos adapted, and maybe it was a little bit before, and they were ready, so to speak. But now we have these more high-end, but not on the cheap stuff usually. But now we have servos that are so well adapted that I can go through this pile and put just an obscene amount of load on the servo and it's barely warm. Just barely warm. It's great. It's great to see. At any rate, yeah, that's me having fun with this servo and this TRX-4 Sport. I'd keep crawling, but yeah, I gotta do stuff. So I do appreciate you tuning in. What a beautiful day we've had today. So if you do have any questions, post them down below. Do my best to get to them. As always, thanks for tuning in. Have a good day.